not going to tap it. You told me not to tap it. Is it on? I want to tap it so bad. Okay, it's on? All right. Thank you so much for, oh, wow, okay. Thank you so much for having me, Foundations for Life. And I want to say I, too, admire so much what you're doing here. Ed Sitter and Jeff Barefoot and Bishop Thomas, who you did not look surprised at all. And I thought someone definitely tipped you off because that was too smooth. He was just like, okay, and that's no. But yeah, that was a really good speech. I'm a little bit uncomfortable following that, but that was really good. It's so unusual today to be in an organization that does not make exceptions in any case. And it always just feels like setting into a warm bath when you're with people who also don't make exceptions for the least of these. And so I'm honored and I'm humbled to be among like-minded people. I was very courteously disinvited to speak after vocally expressing displeasure with Iowa making exceptions for their heartbeat bill after my testimony before the Iowa legislature went viral. And I did say courteously, they very courteously disinvited me, saying, we don't want you to stifle yourself, Jennifer. We don't want you to stifle who you are. We understand that you don't make exceptions, and so we think it's best if you, just don't show up and speak. And so I didn't show up to speak. So it's nice when people don't make exceptions. Anyway, this is what we're going to do tonight. I am going to pretend that I didn't spill soup on the dress that I meant to wear tonight, and you are going to pretend that you're not going to notice about 8 runs in my stockings, and we are going to see... And I'm going to act all casual like I normally speak to crowds this big, and we're going to have a nice night. So, like they said, my name is Jennifer, and I am a wife and a mother of 5. And my kids are, someone just said, aw, someone who doesn't have 5 kids just said, aw, I think. Okay, so my kids range in age from 21 to 4. Oh my God, that was so good. Usually I have to say, I'm going to say that again, and you guys are going to express shock that I have a 21-year-old because I look so young, but you did it already. That was so, oh my gosh, I usually have to stop. Now I'm a little off, now I'm a little wrong-footed because okay. All right, so 21 to 4, and the youngest one just turned 4, and that's a big range, and we weren't quite planning that, but I'm going to get into that. When people see on my bio or something that what I'm going to come speak about, there's always a little hesitation. And they think, okay, well, she's a mother from rape. That's my story. And they're always like, okay, that's going to be a fun night, right? But I'm not going to be talking about a true crime story. I'm not going to be talking about some, violent, horrific, Lifetime movie sort of thing. My story is one of beauty for ashes and restoration and joy. And what it really boils down to is a love story at its core between a mother and a child. I feel like it's only fair to warn you at this point. I am not a very polished speaker. I don't have a whole lot of experience. I haven't been speaking for very long. I've been speaking for 40-something years, but as far as speaking like this, if you appreciate irony, I'm a sign language interpreter, so I've been not speaking professionally for a long time. And that's what I do. I'm in front of big crowds, I'm fine in front of crowds, but I don't speak, and I do that very well. I'm good at that. This part is new for me. I kind of fell into this because of what happened to me. So if any of you are real sticklers, I don't need you to count my ums. People have been very kind with that. Someone came up to me a few weeks ago and they're like, this is how many times I think they worked for Toastmasters. I don't know if you get credit or something, but they're like, this is how many times you said and this is how many times you seem to be at a loss for words. I'm not at a loss for words now. But it's not helpful, okay? I know I'm not smooth, I know I'm not polished, but we're having a moment, okay? This is real life, and we're just talking. So I know that this is not going to be the smoothest presentation, but this is legitimate. This is my life, so work with me, all right? Okay, so... And I don't always tell people when they hire me that I'm not smart. I act like, oh yeah, I've been doing this for years. This is great. So sorry, Ed, but thanks for inviting me. Okay, so back to my life. The story of my 4-year-old, okay? If any of you have a 4-year-old, this is not going to be news, all right? He's kind of he's a tornado, which 4-year-olds are wont to be. You know, he wakes up in the morning and he's got eyes glazed over and his hair's all wild and he looks like he's been on a bender. You know, he's full speed until he's unconscious, and those are the only 2 speeds he has. You're not, these are 4-year-olds. He sings and he screams and he draws all over the walls and himself and his siblings and the dog. And he loves dinosaurs and cars, and he's terrified of cows, and we still can't figure out why that is, but that's the case. And he's this is a sweet part of him. This is the part of him that we can't quite figure out where it came from. I had a really bad surgery a couple months ago, and I wake up and he's sitting by my bed and he's staring at me, which is a little creepy. And he puts his hands on my face and he goes, "Mommy, I just love your sweet self so, so much." I know. And I was like, "Buddy, like I don't know what I did to deserve you, but I can't imagine going through like the last couple of years without you." So he has moments like that, and he's also just a kid. I was doing an interview. Some priest was talking to me on the phone, and he was like, "That baby is just, he's anointed." And from the back you hear, "Mommy, I'm licking the floor like a cat." And they were like, "What was that?" And I was like, that was the anointed one. He's just a kid. Yeah. So he's pretty much everything that you'd expect a typical 4-year-old to be. Okay. What makes him different are the people all around the world, some of them very, very vocal, who think that he should have been killed before he ever had a chance to live. So again, I'm a sign language interpreter, and I will move my hands because it helps me process. Just if you find me staring at you, just like do that so I move, because sometimes I'm used to staring at a small group of deaf people, and I will sometimes just stare at someone because it makes me more comfortable, and it will not make you comfortable. So just let me know, okay? All right. So I travel a lot for work, and in January of 2014, I take this 2-week-long assignment out of town. I'm sorry. Does that have flash? Awesome, thanks. Okay, we found out the hard way flashing. Okay, anyway, I'm going to get into that. So the first week, it's about 3 hours away, this job. And the first week, I'm driving back and forth. I'm working 8 hours, and then I'm driving the 3.5 hours, whatever, and it was not good. During an interview, people were like, "Well, your husband suggested you stay up there. That was really thoughtful." And no, I was really grumpy. Come the weekend after driving like all that time, I was a bear at home. My husband's like, "Honey, why don't you stay up there the second week?" And people were like, "That's so thoughtful." I know, no. He was tired of me. I was not pleasant. So the second week, he suggested I get a hotel room. I was on board with that. It was exhausting. And I also have a tendency to crash our cars when I get tired. We've gone through several. And so it was better for everybody if I stayed up there. So the second week, I finished the job. God bless you. And God bless us all. The last day of the job, it snowed. And it didn't like Ohio snow. It North Carolina snowed, which is like flurries. And if you've ever been to North Carolina, if there are flurries, the state shuts down. The school's closed, there's no bread, there's no batteries, there's no water, no one knows what to do. It's like the apocalypse, okay? Kids are home from school, they're building snow worms, everything changes. So I'm driving back home from the job, which let out early because you never know if there's like half an inch on the ground. They're bringing in snowplows from Virginia. And I'm driving through what looks like a ghost town, and I recognize that. And it was just something that... It was a little eerie, but it was beautiful and it was peaceful. And there was nothing about the day that made me think like this was the day that was going to change my life. I pulled into the parking lot of this hotel, and I'm loading down my arms, and I don't remember what I had in my car, but my arms are all full, and I'm doing everything they tell women not to do. You know, I've got my hood up and I'm blocking my peripheral vision, and I'm not paying attention to what's around me. And I had no idea that I was being followed. My room opened to the outside, which is also something they tell women not to do when you're traveling alone. But I remember thinking at the time, if I tell my husband that I had a room on the outside, he's going to make a big deal. He's going to make me change rooms, and I didn't want to seem difficult. I didn't want to be difficult. So I get up to my room. I'm messing with that stupid little key card that never seems to work right, and I open the door and I fling everything down to the ground because that's who I am as a person. And I turn around to close the door, and there's a man in my doorway. And if we were watching a movie, this would be when the music starts, you know. And if we were watching a movie, the man would have looked like Jack Nicholson at the end of The Shining, or Voldemort from Harry Potter, or something. Something so that we would all know that we were supposed to feel afraid. But I didn't feel afraid. He was young and clean cut and very remarkable in the fact that he looked completely unremarkable. And as a mother, I was like, well, maybe he needs help, you know, and all this snow, maybe his car broke down, or he needs to use my phone or something. And it all goes through my head in about a second, which is about all I had before he punched me in the head. And it's funny because they always talk about fight or flight. You know, you always have that fight or flight. But there's also freeze. And you freeze because stuff like this doesn't happen in real life. You know, this is the stuff of movies. Stuff like this doesn't happen to you. But I froze. And that cost me. Eventually I did fight until I didn't. Until I heard before I felt my fingers break and my ribs break. And at some point, I tried very hard to disappear inside myself. And I said over and over, whatever's happening to my body, he can't touch my soul. And at some point, I passed out. And I woke up to the sound of a woman screaming. And I felt a rush of cold. And I was outside in the back of the hotel. There was a stairwell that led down to the dumpsters. And I was lying in a very strange angle. And there's a woman leaning over me. And she's wearing the hotel housekeeper uniform. And she's trying to put her coat around me. And I realize I'm not wearing anything. And she's crooning at me in Spanish. And the oddest things come to your mind. And I know it is. But I remember thinking all the years that I watched Dora the Explorer with my kids as they were young, and I can't understand a thing that she was saying, and Nickelodeon had failed me. And maybe, I know it's an awkward place to laugh, but it's true. Maybe if she were saying backpack, but nothing. I couldn't understand anything, and it was so frustrating, and I remember trying to pull myself up and realizing that I was badly hurt. I'm lifting my hands up, and there was blood on them. This is an interesting note, and I have not shared this publicly before. We could never find her again, the housekeeper. I called later and I said that the housekeeper who was on staff that day, I wanted to find her. And they said there was no one on staff that day. And I said, no, she talked to the police. I found her. They said, no, there was no one. And I thought, well, maybe she was illegal. You know, she didn't know English. Maybe she was, and they never claimed to have any record of anybody, which gives me chills to this day. Just an aside, I thought it was interesting. Because I was the only one who lived from the man who attacked me. I was the only survivor from the women he attacked. In the hospital, I would be treated for a brain bleed, which would leave me with epilepsy, the broken bones, and some severe internal damage, which brought me back to the 6th surgery that I had this past August. We didn't quite know the extent of the damage at the time. In the aftermath of this attack, things were not good. The world was a very different place, and I was a different woman in it. I'd been a Christian for a long time, so I couldn't say that I was mad at God necessarily, but I was mad. I didn't understand. I didn't think I was exempt from the evil of the world. I knew that that's not the way it worked. I knew that we were promised. Not only were we warned about suffering, we were promised suffering as followers of Christ. I got that. But I couldn't quite wrap my head around the evil that we as humans could do to each other. My husband was trying his best. We'd been married almost 2 decades at that point. Trying his best to be there for me, to be the rock that I needed. But I could I could hear him in the shower punching the walls and crying, and then coming out and trying to be there for me and smiling and being like, we can get through this. This is going to be okay. But he was lying, because it wasn't okay. Nothing was okay. We were trying to handle this on our own. We were looking at each other, but we weren't looking up. We told the kids I'd been in a car accident. We didn't know what to tell them. But they knew things weren't okay either. My husband would come up behind me and just put me in a bear hug, like he'd done 1,000,000 times. But I would double over and clench my fists. And I would scream and I would try to fight. And as I would run to the bathroom, I'd hear one of my little boys go, what happened to Mommy? And my husband shaking, it's okay, I just scared her. It's going to be okay. But again, it wasn't okay. About 5 weeks after the assault, I was scheduled to interpret on a cruise, of all things. This had been in the works for months. It was a big group of deaf people and 4 other interpreters, and it would not have been an easy thing to back out of. And the longer I went without saying anything to this agency that had hired me, the more difficult it would have been, the more unprofessional it would have looked. And my husband was like, if you're feeling okay, I was looking a little bit better. My ribs were bothering me, but I was managing physically. He's like, if you feel okay, maybe you should go. You are not doing well. I wasn't eating. I wasn't sleeping. I wasn't leaving the house. I'm jumping at shadows. He's like, if you feel like you can go, maybe the best thing would be to kind of jump back into normal life. If you go, if you do your job, which you love, you'll be around people, you'll be busy all the time. Maybe it's good. Hasn't he taken enough from us already? So I went, packed a bag, went on this cruise. Bad idea. That's what I did, though. Day 2 of this 10-day excursion, I get sick. I get dysentery. Yes, that's correct. If you've ever had dysentery, you are probably one who just went, oh. And if you haven't, and you are considering it for a sick day, might I suggest anything else in the world? It is awful. And if you are sick on a cruise, they used to let you mingle with people and just kind of ride it out. They do not do that anymore. You are quarantined and you are put away. And so I was quarantined and I was put away. And so I was sent to the medical unit. And if you're familiar at all with cruises, the crew there, everyone is about 12 years old. And they're from all around the world, and everyone signs up because they want an adventure, And so this medical staff, sweet as can be, completely unprepared for what was about to occur with me. They're used to giving out Dramamine and maybe something for jellyfish stings. That's about the extent of what they do, okay? So they'd given me antibiotics, and they wait a day, and I'm not getting better. And they're I can see them kind of elbowing each other and pushing, you deal with her, we don't know. And so one of them comes up, and she was like, we don't know what's good. We're going to give you an IV. And I'm thinking, no, you're not. But she's like, we need to give you a cocktail of something stronger because you're not getting better. We don't know why you're not getting better. Is there any chance you can be pregnant? Yeah. And immediately I say, well, no, because my husband had a vasectomy after my 4th pregnancy, which was almost killed me. It was really, really bad. The doctors were like, one of you needs to get taken care of. They can't do this again. So my husband took one for the team, got a vasectomy. So I just automatically said, well, no, it's not possible. And then I stopped. And I thought. And for the first time out loud, I said, I was raped. And that's an ugly, heavy word, and it just sat there between us for a minute. And I said, you might want to test me. And she did. She definitely didn't want to, but she did. And I see her hold the test, and then she goes to throw it away, and she goes, it's negative, it's definitely negative. And she stops, and she does this. And I'm like, can I see that? And she starts shaking it. And she's like, it's negative. And I'm like, it doesn't shake away. I don't know if you've done this before, but it doesn't matter how badly you might want to. I'm like, can I see it? And there were 2 lines on that test. And I said, that's a positive. And she goes, maybe. And I said, maybe. You're a doctor. And I said, I am not dissing the Ukraine at all, or its medical schools. I said, I get that you're young. And I know you're from another country. I don't know what the medical school procedure is like in the Ukraine, but these are 2 lines, and that's a positive. It even says so in the box. And she goes, well, we're going to do another one. Okay, fine. So we do another one, and now we're holding 2 pregnancy tests that are both positive. And I just kept saying, I don't know what to do. Like, I don't know if you've ever been in the place where you're like completely shocked and also not shocked at all. Like, yeah, this is about how life is going for me right now. That's kind of how it felt. And it was also a time when I could so completely pinpoint when everything changed. And this poor little doctor who was just not at all wanting to be there in that room with me, like looking at this woman who was old enough to be her mother and having to deal with a woman who was raped and pregnant. And I felt bad for her. And I'm like, look, Doogie, like, you can leave. Like, I can deal with this on my own. But she's like, you need to go, you need to get an ultrasound. Like, something could be wrong. The baby could be in the tube. You've been in pain. You've been sick. And she's like, we're going to make an emergency stop. We need to pull over. You need to get an ultrasound. I always say that, pull over. It's not that easy. It's not like a car. It's a big cruise ship. But an emergency stop needed to be done. So within less than 24 hours, I find myself in Cartagena, Colombia. Again, not just in Cartagena, but not the place you want to go for emergency medical care. That's all I'm saying. So I'm in what looks like a basement, but they swear is a top hospital. So I'm going with that. I've got an interpreter. I'm in it, again, old, drippy, dark. And I'm thinking, I don't know, like, my life is so surreal right now. And they pull over what looks like this old, like, Frankenstein, like, machine, and it's like, and but it's an ultrasound, and as soon as they flip that screen, and I will not get through this without crying, as soon as they flip that screen, there's that grainy black and white, you know, like an old TV. But in the middle of all that, did you want to get that? In the middle of all that, there's this little P. And the interpreter starts to talk, and I was like, no, I got it. I know what that is. For the first time since I had been raped, I smiled. I looked at that little P on that screen, and I smiled at him. Because in that moment of complete darkness and confusion and pain, that little P was light and hope and joy. That was my baby. Back on the ship, in the medical unit, everyone had been talking, you know, and no one was looking at me. And finally, one of the doctors comes over and she goes, you can use the cabins, or the captain's quarters. You can call your husband. Great. So we had been emailing, my husband Jeff and I, and he knew I was sick, but I was not about to tell him over email, hey, by the way. So I called him, and I just said, are you sitting down? Just not a great way to begin a conversation. I realize this, but I really just wanted to get to the point. Okay, I'm going to hold that right there, okay. We first shared our story, like Jeff mentioned, and it went viral. This was 2014. And it went over 1 million shares to Facebook. It went global. It was just, people were talking about it. It felt like the whole world was talking about us. Not particularly favorably, by the way. Okay, I must have gotten brain damage, which I was punched in the head, which I thought was pretty rude. My husband had some kind of weird rape fetish, get the F off our planet, we're tainting the gene pool, all this kind of horrible stuff. One comment that came up over and over and over again was a reference to the movie Rob Roy, which I hadn't seen. I've only seen bits and pieces still to this day, but if you haven't seen it, and I'm not plugging it, this is the comment. It stars Liam Neeson, and he's, 14th, 15th, 16th, 17th, 13th, something. Scottish Highlander. This is how well I follow movies, okay? And it's about him and his wife, played by Jessica Lange, and at the pinnacle of the movie, Rob Roy's, bless you, wife is raped by his arch nemesis, okay? That's the whole thing. And she finds out that she's pregnant, and she has to tell him, so it's very dramatic. And she tells him, husband, I couldn't kill the child. And, he's all Liam Neeson-y. And so he says, Mary, it's not the child that needs killing. And it's like, wow, okay. I said that wrong. It should be killing, not the child that needs killing. That sounds more Liam Neeson-y. Okay. So it's just like, it's this very inadvertent but a pro-life moment. So it's like, wow, you don't often see that in the movies. You know, like he recognizes that the child is innocent, but he loves his wife, and it's all very, you know, like swoon. Great. Okay. So I mentioned this in Ireland. Not a good plan, okay? Because they go there to talk about, before the voting on the repealing the 8th, and they bring me in to talk about how children from rape are great and, you know, yay, rape babies. Okay. So that was not exactly the way I said it, but that was sort of the gist. And Liam Neeson had come out recently with his pro-abortion stance, which really upset everybody because he was their hometown boy, you know? So it was really disheartening. And it was disheartening for anyone who was pro-life to see this man who played this great, you know, sort of iconic role as a pro-lifer to be this not real stand-up man, you know? So it was like, okay, well, you're not Rob Roy. You're this wimpy man. Where are the real men? Where are the Rob Roys? So I was able to be in Ireland and to say, okay, so yeah, Liam Neeson wasn't one. That's not a Rob Roy. But guess what? I married one. Back on the ship, called my husband. Are you sitting down? I'm pregnant. A second of silence, and he says to me, okay. Annoyed me like you don't even know. I said, okay, what? Like, okay, what? Like, I need more, like, I need some kind of reaction. Give me something. Okay, what? And he said, honey, sweetheart. And that's usually our dynamic. I'm always like, what? And he's just like, huh. So, okay, what? When he comes to talk with me, this is when he starts to cry. So I can always picture in my head, like, this is him bawling. He said, sweetheart, this baby's a gift. He said, I know. He said, this is something beautiful. Come from something so terrible and painful for us. He said, we love babies. And I said, yeah, we love babies. And he said, we can do this. You and me, we can do this. This will be awesome. And I said, okay. So all week long on the ship, I listened to well-meaning doctors and nurses tell me, look, you're going to go home. You're going to take a pill, little procedure. It's early. You can get rid of it. Get rid of it. You can move on with your life. It'll be like it never happened. Really? And the more I heard people tell me how easy it would be to kill my baby, the more defensive I felt, the more protective I felt. And see, these are just a few of the myriad of lies they tell women at their most broken and their most vulnerable. Abort and you can move on. Abort and you can forget. If you keep the child, who no one calls a child, because then it's real, you will always have this reminder hanging over your head, this reminder. So ask me if my son is a reminder. Yes, he is. My son is a reminder every day that as women we can rise above our circumstances. My son is a reminder that love is always stronger than hate. He's a reminder that who we are is not determined by how we are conceived. Thank you. At the end of my stay, I asked to speak to this team who'd been with me, these doctors, these nurses, housekeeping staff who'd wander past my room and see me like staring at the walls in the middle of the night. And I just said, thank you for being here for me for this week. If you ever wonder what happened to me, if you ever think about this again, know that my husband and I had a beautiful baby in the fall of 2014. Silence. No one said a thing. My 12-year-old Ukrainian doctor came to me, and she had been, I always wonder if she's going to hear this one day and be offended. She was very sweet. She had been pushing abortion from the beginning. She put her hand on my arm, and she had tears in her eyes. And she just looked at me for a long time. She didn't say a thing. But I remember just being kind of taken aback and thinking, God did something there. Like something just happened with her. I don't know what, but something happened. Like, this is powerful. And she just turned and walked away. And this other doctor said to me, did you ever think you could be so strong? And I said, I don't think it's strength. I'm just a woman and I'm having a baby. I think one of the biggest questions we get asked all the time is, what are you going to tell your son? What are you going to say to him? I mean, he says, why didn't I know about this? Why didn't you tell me this sooner? And it's so simple to us. I mean, just say it didn't matter. It didn't matter to us. You're not some rapist child. You are ours, and you are his, and you are wonderful. And none of us would be the people that we are without you. You came into our lives at a time of brokenness, and you healed this whole family. Who you are is the people who pour into you. Who you are is your mother and your father and your sister and your brothers and your aunts and your uncles and your grandparents and your godparents and the people all around the world who know what a gift you are. That's who you are, and that's who you'll be. We're going to tell him that there were all these voices at the time saying that you should not be here, that you do not deserve to be here, and they were loud. But we loved you louder. There are still voices out there, almost 70% of people who call themselves pro-life, who believe themselves to be pro-life, who make exceptions in cases of rape or incest. I believe my son to be exceptional, but he is no exception, and we love him louder. And little boy, should you ever doubt your worth in our eyes, in God's eyes, should you ever doubt our love, we will love you the loudest. Right now, anyone who works in pro-life, you feel all the hate, all the anger, all the bitterness, all the vileness coming from the other side. It is on us to love them louder. No war is ever won by sending back anger and hate. And make no mistake, it is a war that we are fighting. Not many people are going to stand the way Foundations for Life stands. It is an honor to stand in the trenches with them, with you. Imagine the work that we can do with our voices, loving louder, speaking that truth into the darkness that demands that we redefine humanity. I get tagged in stuff on Facebook all the time. Anytime someone mentions conceiving and rape, it's like, Jennifer. And I don't often respond because people usually just want to be nasty. They usually just want to be mean. Once in a while, there's a comment that I'll respond to. One time there was a guy who was arguing with me about, why don't you think about the woman? Why doesn't anyone think about the woman? He didn't know who I was. And I thought, okay, I'll respond to this one. So I said, all right, let's think about the woman. And I want you to listen to my response because I represent the 75 to 85% of women who conceive and rape and choose against abortion. And this is not often what you hear, but that's true. I'm going to say that again. 75 to 85% of the 32,000 women per year who become pregnant through rape do not abort. This is what I wrote. Okay, let's think about the woman. The morning after she's raped, she is shocked to find out that the sun still rises because everything in her world has changed. She feels different, wrong, inexplicably ashamed. Certain strangers can look at her and see that she is damaged. She walks around thinking, I'm a woman who's been raped and knows that forever her life has been split in half before she became a statistic and after. She prefers noise to the quiet because in the silence she hears things he said to her, things she knows she'll never repeat. She stays awake because when she closes her eyes, she sees him looming over her. The taste of her own blood lingers on her tongue and she does not eat. She speaks to other survivors, the man who loves her friends, but she feels terribly, desperately alone. When at first the faint second line blossoms on that pregnancy test, for a moment she feels as though the wind is knocked out of her. Instinctively, her hands drift to her still flat belly and she tries to steady her breath. She knows what she should feel, anger, rage, maybe. But somehow, for the first time since crossing over into that after, she doesn't feel quite so adrift. Somehow, For the first time since crossing over into the after, she feels a reason to go on. She couldn't protect herself, but she could protect her baby. Her baby. It's okay, she whispers to nobody, to everybody. I'm going to take care of you. But they take care of each other. And in little arms and big eyes, and the purest of all earthly love, she begins to heal. And he didn't respond. Can you believe that? The nerve. I really wanted a response. Nothing. So I'm nobody, right? I'm not a name. Most of you guys will never hear from me. You'll never think about me again. But my son is young right now, and he doesn't have a voice. So it is my absolute honor to be here to speak for him, to stand in the gap for him, and that's what we're all doing here. To stand in the gap for those who don't have a voice yet, so that one day they will. Not just for children conceived in rape or incest, but for all of them. I'm a mother, and my voice matters, regardless of the fact that I don't have, a string of letters after my name or a college degree, and my mother has requested that I don't share that when I speak. My voice matters. You, whoever you are, whatever your story is, your voice matters. Like I said, our voices together, loving louder, can pierce that darkness. Under an article of mine once, someone wrote, "Why is this a story?" And he meant it to be snarky. He meant it as a dig. But I thought it was pretty profound. I thought, yeah, exactly. Why is this a story? It shouldn't be a story. Jennifer, you need to have an abortion. I heard it over and over and over, but it wasn't something that was ever up for discussion. I don't wake up in the morning and wonder if I'm going to blink that day. I don't think about my heart pumping blood or my lungs taking in air or the neurons firing in my brain. It's just what happens. It happens naturally by design. It's the way we're fearfully and wonderfully made. Why is this a story? A woman's body is magnificently created to foster, to grow life. How have we deluded ourselves that destroying that is somehow empowering? Why is this a story? How have we decided that today motherhood is akin to modern day slavery, that it's repression, oppression, depression, that the celebration of life is now a lamentation of a burden? Why is this a story? Children don't tie us down. They give us wings to fly. Why is this a story? It shouldn't be a story. In a better world, it wouldn't be a story. But I will be standing up and speaking out until it isn't. I'm going to finish with something a little different for you, maybe not so much for me. I'm going to sign something. I'm going to sign a song. I don't know if you are familiar with Ryan Baumberger, but you should be. Ryan's a cool guy. I often search the internet for stories of adult children who were conceived in rape. I like to know how they found out. I like to know what worked, what didn't, the good, the bad, the ugly, all of that. And I came across Ryan's story. Ryan and his wife Bethany run the Radiance Foundation. Wonderful organization, very, very pro-adoption. Ryan was conceived in rape, placed for adoption, never met his birth mother. Beautiful story. Among a bazillion hats that he wears, Ryan is also a singer and a songwriter. And he wrote this song for his mother called Meant to Be. And it basically just says, I know that you went through hell for me. But because of all that you did, look what I have. I have this life. I have all of this that I can enjoy because of you. And I listened to this. I put it on repeat, and I just wept. I swear I'm not much of a crier, but I just cried. And I cried for every person who said that my son would grow up to hate me. And for every person that said he would grow up and be damaged, be evil, be wrong. And I recorded it, and I signed it, and I thought, well, one day I'll give it to my boy so he'll know how much I love him, how much I always loved him. And I shared it with a friend of mine. She's like, oh, my gosh, you have to send it to Ryan. And I was like, no, I don't. And she's like, no, he'll love it, really. But Ryan seems like an imposing guy. You see pictures of him, and he's, all buffed and ripped, and he's in his Radiance Foundation T-shirts. And I was like, that'd be weird. And she's like, no, really do it. So I did it. And I didn't hear anything back for half a day. And then I got this message back, and he just said, oh my gosh, I'm bawling, I'm crying over here. And I thought, oh my gosh, he's a marshmallow. And he was. He just loved it, and he put it on his pages. And it was a really neat moment. There's a really neat kinship between children who are conceived in rape and don't know their birth parents and mothers who keep their children from rape. It's a neat relationship. So I'm going to sign Meant to Be. And if you just listen to the words, it's a beautiful song, and it's what you hear, what I hear most often. I know a lot of children, adult children who are conceived in rape, and it's what I hear, the sentiment that they say, just thank you for my life. And it's the heart that I pray my boy has one day. So this is Meant to Be by Ryan Baumberger. And I'm going to take off my shoes because otherwise I will slip and fall. And that's all I'm taking off, so no one look nervous, okay? And when I'm ready, I'm going to give you this, and you don't have subwoofers, which is unfortunate, but just make it loud as you can, okay?
I know it wasn't easy. I know it changed your life. I imagine no words could console the woman he had defiled, but somehow you found the courage and the grace to carry on when everyone around you told you this child should not be born. No, I know I was meant to be. This life was meant for me. Though you went through so much pain, oh, your tears, they were not in vain. Although you could not see what God had planned for me. Every day you faced the questions, torn by the light you had received. Every tear was a reminder of how I was conceived. But in the middle of the confusion, you found the strength to make it through. And now I can love and be loved, all because of you. I was meant to be. This life was meant for me. Though you went through so much pain, your tears, they were not in vain. I know you could not see what God had planned for me. I know, yeah, I know, yeah, I know there's a plan, I know there's a reason for my life. Deep down inside, was meant to.